A delivery driver takes an order to a dark, long-abandoned student apartment. Then the missing cash and the manager's daylight visit prove the customer was never alive. Welcome to Alex's Story Time, and I am Alex. Everyone's story is called Delivery Adventure, and it is told in the first person, but this is not my story. Here is the story. When I was in college, I rented a place in a student apartment near the school, which was a common phenomenon. There were many privately owned student dormitories or apartments around the campus. Since my family's financial situation was average, I had to earn the rent by working part-time. I once worked as a food delivery person for a restaurant. The restaurant only provided delivery services during its downtime, so I was responsible for almost everything from answering the phone, checking the address, packaging the food, to delivering it. Most of the customers who ordered from this restaurant were nearby residents or students from our university. After working there for a while, I became familiar with the names and locations of many student apartments, and I even remembered the names of some of the tenants. One evening, after finishing more than 10 orders and just about to rest, the phone rang again. "Hello, it is Flavor Hall. I'd like to order some food for delivery," came a man's voice. I replied, "Sure. May I have your name, address, and contact number?" But there was no response from the other end. I often encountered customers who were unsure of their exact location, so I did not think much of it and then continued to wait for his reply. Sure enough, after a short while, he continued. "My name is Tiankang. The address is number 80, Jiancheng Road, Oxiang Student Apartment." After confirming the information, I took the order for the customer, checked the address on the map, and then set off on my electric scooter with the meal placed on the back rack. After about 10 minutes of riding, the surroundings began to look desolate. Universities are rarely located in a city center, and I did not think much about it. As I rode further, I saw the apartment building by the roadside. It was a large structure, and I had seen it from a distance a few times before, but this was the first time I was so close. It was a 4-story, steel-framed building, quite old, and its appearance clearly showed signs of weathering. When I arrived, it was already past 9 in the evening, but not a single light was on in the entire building. To be honest, even if the rent was only 800 yuan, I wouldn't want to live here. It was then that I realized I had made a mistake. I had forgotten to ask for the room number. In this situation, I had no choice but to call the customer on my phone. Back then, it was not common for people to answer calls from unfamiliar numbers. I was a bit discouraged, holding the order slip in one hand and dialing the number with the other. To my surprise, the call was answered very quickly. "Hello," I said, but before I could finish, the other side replied, "Just leave it at the management office." His response made me feel a bit uncomfortable. He didn't even know who I was, but I still breathed a sigh of relief and thanked him. I opened a somewhat unreliable door and entered the building. It was very dark and quiet inside. Even the distant sound of cars could be heard. There was no sign of any residents. The doors were lined up on both sides of the corridor, stretching to the end. There were no lights in the hallway, and rather than looking for the light switch, I decided it would be better to just deliver the food quickly and leave. I thought to myself, using the dim light from my phone to illuminate the door numbers, I walked to the end of the corridor and finally found the management office. When I knocked on the door, the light from inside shone into the hallway, and a thin man poked his head out. He said very politely, "Oh, sorry to trouble you so late." The bright light and his polite demeanor made me feel more at ease, and I even managed to make a joke. "It's really dark in here." I felt quite scared walking all the way in. After dropping off the food and collecting the payment, I left without any delay and returned to the restaurant. At 10 o'clock, when the restaurant closed, I chatted with the manager while we cleaned up and calculated the day's revenue. I was comparing the orders with the cash register when I realized that we were short by 129 yuan. If it had been just a few tens of yuan, I could have quietly made up the difference with my own money. But this discrepancy was too large. The manager, who had been watching me count, asked, "Think harder. Did you lose it on the way? Did you drop the money on the way back from the delivery?" I checked the delivery orders again and found the answer right away. Only the order from that apartment building matched the missing amount. I told the manager, "It must have been lost when I came back from Ocean student apartment." He looked even more puzzled and said, "What? Did you get the wrong name of the apartment? Check again." Although I didn't understand the manager's intention, I took out my phone, launched the map, and showed him the location of the building. The manager then took out a notebook with addresses and phone numbers of all the student apartments and started flipping through it, muttering to himself. In the end, I wasn't scolded that day, nor was I asked to compensate for the money. After eating the stuffed meal, I returned to my own apartment. A few days later, the manager told me, "If that guy named Tiankang calls again, just to refuse him politely." I knew this was the way to deal with the prank calls or unreasonable customers. So I asked the manager why. He sighed and said, "Don't be scared when you heard this." Then he lit a cigarette and began to tell me. The landlord of that student apartment used to be a regular customer here 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe because of that, the students living there also liked to order food from here. But later, the landlord fell seriously ill and passed away, and the student apartment closed down as well. Given the economic situation in recent years, it's not unusual for student apartments to go out of business. The other day, when you said you delivered food to that building, I thought maybe the landlord's relatives had reopened it. So I went to check yesterday at noon. But the building was still in ruins and did not look like anyone was living there. I was about to leave, thinking you had made a mistake, when I heard a sinister voice from the management room saying, "Come in." I was startled and stood there dumbfounded. The voice called out again, "Come in." Although I was scared, it was daylight, so I opened the door and looked inside. The room was in a state of decay, with cobwebs and mildew everywhere. I called out several times, but there was no response. But what really scared me and made me run back in broad daylight was when I looked down at my feet and saw the food you had delivered a few days ago scattered on the ground. After hearing the manager's story, I didn't want to investigate further, whether it was a ghost or something else. I had already been to that strange apartment and even chatted with that strange entity. The manager had tried to call the number I had written down, but it did not get through. Of course, I had already deleted the call record. A few months later, I resigned. To put it nicely, I wanted a change of environment. But in reality, I couldn't get that incident out of my mind whenever I went to work. What was it? A month after the incident, Tiankang called again. I deliberately raised my voice so the manager could hear. "Ah, Mr. Tiankang, is that you?" I tried hard to hide my fear and the trembling in my voice. The manager noticed and took the call, lying to the caller and saying, "We have suspended the delivery services for now." The moment he hung up the phone, the manager's face turned pale. He looked at me and said one sentence. He said he's coming to the restaurant now. My fear reached its peak. But no stranger or strange person came that day. Yes, nothing happened that day. But I couldn't work there anymore. So everybody, if you were me, what would you do? This is the end of the whole story. Please share what you think of the story and your stories. If you enjoy my work and would like to help me continue to bring this story to you, please subscribe to my channel or like my page. Give a thumbs up to the stories you appreciate and share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. I'd love to read them. Share the stories with anyone who might find them enjoyable. And I need a co-editor, a native English speaker to make these stories better. Thank you, everybody. This is Alex's Story Time, and I am Alex. I got a lot of good stories to share with you. See you next time. Bye-bye.